Hey, welcome back 7th graders to Mr. Kenrick's online math class. Today we are going to be doing lesson 1.5, dividing integers. Make sure you have your math notebook out and you turn to a fresh page and write the lesson title at the top. And the essential question, is the quotient of two integers positive, negative, or zero? How can you tell? Below the title. Okay, remember the quotient is the answer we get when we divide one quantity by another. And when we did multiplication, the answer that we get is called the product. Alright, we are going to start by dividing integers with different signs. So we're going to look at using some integer counters to find negative 15 divided by 3. Okay, so we're going to begin with 15 negative counters. So each one of these red circles with a negative sign in it represents a negative 1. All right, and we're going to, dividing means to break a number down into groups. Okay, so we're going to try to make even groups with negative 15. And you'll see we got 3 even groups of negative 5. Each one of these red circles here represents a negative 1. Okay, so negative 15 divided by 3 is equal to 3 groups of negative 5. So because there are five negative counters in each group, negative 15 divided by 3 is equal to negative 5. Okay, so we got 3 groups of negative 5. Go ahead and pause now. Make sure you write this example down in your math notebook. Alright, now we're going to look at rewriting a product as a quotient. And a product is, again, the answer that we get when we multiply two integers. So, rewrite the product 3 times 4 equals 12 as a quotient in two different ways. Okay, so we're going to break down that multiplication problem and we're going to switch it into a division problem. So the first way, 12 is equal to 3 groups of how many? Well, we're going to use these 3 and 4 here. So 12 is equal to 3 groups of 4. Okay, so 12 divided by 3 is 4. And let's look at the second way. 12 is equal to 4 groups of 3. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. Okay, so real quick you can see we just used these multiplied numbers 3 and 4 and the product of 12 and we switched it into a division problem. Okay, make sure you pause here, get this example down in your math notebook. Alright, now let's look at dividing integers with different signs. So we're going to use the same numbers, but they're going to be negatives. So rewrite the product negative 3 times negative 4 equals 12 as a quotient in two different ways. What can you conclude? Or what idea can you come up with after completing these two division problems? So you can use either negative 3 or negative 4. So we'll start with negative 3. 12 divided by negative 3 is equal to negative 4. Okay, 12 divided by negative 4 is equal to, what do you think? If you think negative 3, you are exactly right. 12 divided by negative 4 is equal to negative 3. After looking at this, in each case, when you divide a positive integer by a negative integer, you get a negative integer. Okay, so that's important. If you divide a positive by a negative, you will get a negative. Go ahead and pause here. Write this example down in your math notebook. Okay, now here is the key idea for this lesson. When you're dividing integers with the same sign, the quotient of two integers with the same sign is positive. So 8 divided by 2 gives you a positive 4, or a negative 8 divided by a negative 2 gives you a positive 4. When you're dividing integers with different signs, the quotient of two integers with different signs is negative. And again, quotient is our answer that we get. So 8 divided by negative 2 will give you a negative 4. Or a negative 8 divided by a positive 2 will give you a negative 4. Okay. Pause here and get these key ideas down in your math notebook. And now let's look at some examples. All right, we got some practice problems. Before we get to those problems, I want to talk to you about this tool that I think would be helpful for you to understand. Okay, so if you look at this tic-tac-toe board, we have positives going from diagonal from top left to bottom right, and the rest are all negatives. Okay, and we can use this tool for both multiplication of integers and dividing integers. Okay, and I'll show you how we read it. A positive divided by a negative gives you a negative. A negative divided by a positive gives you a negative. A negative divided by a negative gives you a positive. And a positive divided by a positive will give you a positive. Okay, so this column on the right, the third column, is the product or the quotient. Okay, and these are the multipliers or divisors in the first two columns. Okay, another way that you could think about this is this rule here. A positive divided by a positive gives you a positive. Negative divided by a negative will give you a positive as well. And a positive divided by a negative gives you a negative. And a negative divided by a positive gives you a negative. So if you write these tools down in your math notebook, you'll be able to refer to them as you're doing these problems. All right, let's do some examples. We got 27 divided by 3. Okay, if we look over here, we got two positives, so our answer should be positive. And 27 divided by 3. How many groups of 3 are there in 27? There are 9 groups of 3 in 27. Okay. B, negative 14 divided by 2. Well, if we look over here, we have a negative divided by a positive, so our quotient is going to be a negative. Okay, so we can just look at the whole numbers themselves. 14 divided by 2. We know that there are 7 groups of 2 in 14, so 14 divided by 2 will give you 7. And we have that negative there, so we got negative 7. All right, last one. Negative 20 divided by negative 5. All right, look back over here. We got 2 negatives, so our quotient should be positive. And if we just divide the whole numbers, 20 divided by 5, well, 5, there are 4 groups of 5 and 20. So our answer would be 4. And then looking at the signs, we got 2 negatives, so our answer is a positive 4. All right, lastly, we're going to look at evaluating an expression. Okay, remember, when you're we need to use order of operations when we're evaluating an expression. So if we evaluate 10 minus x squared divided by y, when x equals 8 and y equals negative 4. Okay, the first thing we need to do is plug in the 8 and the negative 4 into our expression, and it will look like this. 10 minus 8 squared divided by a negative 4. Okay, now using order of operations, we need to evaluate that exponent. And remember that 8 is a positive 8. So 10 minus 8 squared divided by negative 4. We can get rid of that exponent by using repeated multiplication, or just saying 8 times 8. Okay, so now we don't have any exponents in our expression, and we got 10 minus 8 times 8 divided by negative 4. And using order of operations, we need to do that multiplication first because it comes before division from left to right. So if we multiply 8 by 8, we'll get 64. And now our expression is 10 minus 64 divided by negative 4. So now we'll divide 64 by negative 4. And remember that 64 is a positive 64. Okay, so it's positive 64 divided by negative 64. And something that might help you see that is if you put these parentheses here. Okay. So now, after we divide, negative 4 goes into 64 negative 16 times. Okay, and if we look back at our rule, positive 64 divided by negative 4, there is one negative there, so our answer will be negative. And now we can simplify 10 minus negative 16. Okay, and remember from our adding and subtracting integer lessons, subtraction is really adding the opposite. So you can also do this as 10 plus 16, and that will give you a 26. Okay, so we got, when we evaluate this expression, we can simplify it all the way down to 26 when x is 8 and y is negative 4. Alright, lastly we got a few examples of evaluating expressions. So first one, a divided by b when a is negative 18 and b is negative 6. So we have negative 18 divided by negative 6. Alright, so if we look at our positive and negatives there, we got two negatives. So that means our answer will be positive. How many groups of 6 are there in 18? There are 3 groups of 6 in 18, and again, our answer is positive because we have two negatives. Alright, next one. A plus 6 divided by 3 when a is equal to negative 18. Okay, so if we substitute negative 18 for a, we will get negative 18 plus 6 divided by 3. Okay. Now there are ways that we could simplify this, but I'm going to go through each step, starting with negative 18 plus 6. If we're adding a positive 6, that means we are going to move to the right on the number line. In this case, we'll be moving from negative 18 closer, 6 spots closer to 0, which would be negative 12. And then we got negative 12 divided by 3. And thinking about our rules, we got one negative, so our answer is going to be a negative. So I'm just going to write that negative there. And 12 divided by 3 is 4. Okay, so our answer is negative 4. All right, one more. B squared over a plus 4. And b is equal to negative 6. Okay, now, something that is important for us to understand, b is equal to negative 6. So if b is squared, we have to square that negative 2. Okay, so b squared over negative 18 plus 4. Okay, and we can do repeated multiplication, so negative 6 times negative 6 over negative 18 plus 4. Put these parentheses here so we remember those are negatives. And negative times a negative gives us a positive, so negative 6 times negative 6 is 36 divided by 18, or plus plus 4. And if in our division problem, 36 divided by negative 18 is 1 negative. So our answer, our quotient is going to be negative. 36 divided by 18 is 2. And we got that negative, so our expression turns to negative 2 plus 4. And we can combine. Negative 2 plus 4, we're moving to the right on the number line, and our answer is a positive 2. All right, hopefully this helps. Remember to reach out to me with any questions.